Welcome back to Carolina Talk. Woody, I want to kind of follow up on something you said about the campuses, going on to the campuses throughout North Carolina. That particular mission, if you will, to do that, means that the GOP chair would have to stand up and fight to get equal time on those campuses. The bottom line is the liberal movement on the campuses is pervasive, and they have control over the campuses in so many different ways. I'm thinking, my notes here, and where I'm going with this, is I'm thinking back to Haley Barbour. And during his time as a national GOP chair, he was in the news almost as much as some of the elected officials were. He was out there fighting on the issues. He was on TV. He was, on the internet. He was writing columns. Is that your vision? Do you see that as the role of the GOP chair? Because right now we have not had that here in North Carolina.
Well, I think the role is varied. It first deals with just the mechanics of the checkoff funds and the staffing and paying the bills and things like that. But that's not what drives people to the polls. I think from a 30,000-foot perspective, what the party chairman can do and what I intend to do in North Carolina is set the agenda. Because without a message, if you don't have the message, Curtis, it does not translate into votes. And we can talk about last November and the presidential election and how Obama, of course, got all these folks to go to the polls, and young people and old people, and demographically they just defeated Republicans. And statistically that's true. But he found a message that resonated. And in some ways, our message has been co-opted by him. If he tells everyone he's going to give them a tax cut, well, that's a lot of reasons why they voted for him. We cut taxes. The Democrats have a proven record of not cutting taxes, of increasing them and spending more money. But he told them that. And so back to your question, I think the first overall job that we can do as a party and that I intend to do as chairman is start with that message, because without it, it does not translate into votes.
But as Woody, as I look, and I know you're sure you would feel the same way, when I look at the Democratic Party and then someone says to me the liberal movement, I don't see any space between the two. However, when you get to North Carolina conservatives, North Carolina Republicans, and there's other groups out there that have splintered off, there is space between them, and they're not supporting each other. There's not unity. How would you go about bringing them? I mean, we need a message. How do you bring those groups together?
Well, I think you bring them together, Curtis, by educating the voters. What happens after an election is everybody goes back to their job, goes back to their routine life of school, children's activities, their community activities, whatever. They kind of put the elections aside and they say, you know what, we're going to think about that next time. Well, what we need to do is continue to engage the electorate, to continue to engage people, to educate them on what these politicians actually do when they get sworn in and they start convening the legislature. For example, this week the state legislature began for 2009. The local Democratic politicians go home and they run conservative and they go up to Raleigh and they act like liberals, because they are. What we have to do is remind folks back home, anecdotally, go down the line item agenda and show them. For example, yesterday, the very first day of session, the Democrats are now seriously entertaining taxing your movies, your music, and your ringtone downloads. They think it'll bring $8 million in revenue on a $22 billion budget. That's a tax they haven't thought of yet. That's just one example.
Same with the mileage tax. And
Same with the mileage, the
ideas.
taxes on services. It's on and on and on. 3 or 4 years ago, it was the satellite TV tax, and it's food tax. You wake up in the morning, you take a shower, you pay property taxes, you eat your food that's taxed, you go to work, your income is taxed, you put gas in your tank, it's taxed. It is just a nonstop proposition. And if we take that message to the voters and remind them, anecdotally, here's how it affects your life every single day, hopefully at some point they will hold those legislators responsible at the next election.
But see, one of the things, I'm in the media, so and especially talk radio, we get attention, and that's why people listen to us. We find a way to get attention. And what I've found is there's nobody really helping the Republicans get attention. The message, they can even create a message or crop a message and get it out, but what they don't do is bold moves to get attention so then you can bring home and connect the dots, if you will. How do you do that? And I've always thought it should be the chair of the party that might be able to be that one, to grab the spotlight and then, okay, now I'm going to shine the light on this.
Well, that's one of the primary roles a chairman can do, and that's what I intend to do. You want to stay away from theatrics, and I think voters see through theatrics very quickly. But as a party chairman, particularly in a state where we have a Democratic governor, a Democratic lieutenant governor, no Speaker of the House, and no President of the Senate, the leader of the party essentially is the default voice of the party. Now, certainly we have Senator Richard Burr, who is a very good spokesperson for our party and will continue to be. But for that one exception, the state party chairman is charged with the duty of pointing out the corruption in Raleigh, continuing to try to remind the press about it, but ultimately understanding that if we want to get our message out there, the press is not going to do us any favors. We've got to get our message out ourselves.
Have you thought, I mean, have you, in your mind, have you thought about a travel around the state and actually you as the chair having regular kind of town hall meetings or things like that, so it's not this person in Raleigh trying to connect with 100 counties?
Absolutely. I'm not from Raleigh. I'll spend some time there, but I intend to spend a lot of time across the state. I went to high school in Asheville for 2 years, for example. I know the mountain area very well. I love traveling up there. I live at the beach. I'll spend time in Raleigh, but Raleigh is to North Carolina what Washington is to America. And so I think it's more important to go into the smaller towns, particularly the rural areas, where we've seeded the ground and said, yeah, they might vote for Republicans for president, but they're not going to vote for us because locally they always vote for Democrats. Well, why is that? We've got to go educate them on how their day-to-day lives are impacted by the liberal policies that the Democratic establishment puts in place in Raleigh and perpetuates.
Let's take a quick break. We'll come right back. We have one more segment with Woody White. He's a candidate now for the North Carolina GOP chair. I'm Curtis Wright.